Hello, world.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello
Hi.
there.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
It's like I've forgotten how to say hello.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Life with CACA. I'm your host and fellow producer, Carolina Gropa. It's been a while. It's been a minute, actually. About a month. Gosh, it feels crazy. The time is flying by. Does anybody else feel it? I admittedly have not been able to put out episodes during this time. I've felt a bit unmotivated, uninspired, and to be honest, just didn't feel like putting out episodes that were going to be mediocre. I really wanted to take this time to sort of take a pause, just take a minute to realign with myself. So thank you for your patience. If you don't already subscribe to the show, please head over to Apple Podcasts, subscribe, rate, give us a 5-star review. Anything you can do to spread the word and increase the visibility of the show is tremendous. I've loved hearing how the show has impacted and empowered and inspired everyone so far. It's really why I do this. In the face of uncertainty, it's important to take your time. I have struggled to do the same, to practice what I preach, but here we are. I'm hoping to get back on the horse and continue to bring you guys consistent episodes on a weekly basis. So this week on the show, I'm so excited. I got to sit and talk to Stacey Feinberg, who is an investor and a producer on JAGGED LITTLE PILL on Broadway. She sunk her teeth into business while assisting her father at his pioneering sports and entertainment law firm, Woolf Associates. Beyond negotiating contracts, they also managed every aspect of the lives and careers of over 300 clients, including Larry Bird, Larry King, Joe Montana, and New Kids on the Block. In the late 90s, she co-founded a hedge fund and a decade later pivoted to pre-IPO investing. She was an early investor in some startup companies you may have heard of that include Facebook, Zico Water, Alibaba, and Michael Kors. All of that is extremely impressive and makes my head spin. But what I love most about Stacey is that after making enough money, she shifted her focus to funding and empowering female entrepreneurs. As she likes to say, women don't need a hand out, they need a hand up. During our hour together, Stacey shines a light on how she's been able to empower women, why it's so important to her, and the advice she gives to budding investors who want to support female artists. So let's dig in and hear from Stacey. So thank you.
I left your Mary Howard, by the way. That was a great one.
Did you? Oh, thank you for, yeah, she's such a light, that woman.
I'm jealous that you got to do it at her house. But I'll just have to have you back. That's all.
I know. I definitely want to come and see your house, come visit you, meet you in person. Obviously, this is interesting times for all of us. And so thank you for taking the time to sit and talk to me, because I can imagine not everybody may be in the headspace or the spirit to sit and chat about some of this stuff. So I'm very grateful to you.
Thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about you. Give me some context, some backstory to the listeners, who you are and how you got to be in this here moment in time.
Yeah. So life is not a straight road, as most of us knows. There's a lot of zigging and a lot of zagging that goes on, and things that, opportunities arise that you never expect. But I always say that be willing to take a chance, be willing to pivot, be willing to try something different. I call it collecting breadcrumbs, because you just don't even know where down the road you're going to say, oh, wow, that was something that was important. And now I'm supposed to zig instead of zag. Now I'm supposed to take a left instead of a right. So people have to be a lot more cognizant of the fact that you're probably going to have a dozen different careers in your life. If you have one career, because let's say you've wanted to be a veterinarian since you're 9 years old, wonderful. But for a lot of us, we shouldn't be afraid of trying lots of things. And when you're young, your opportunity costs are at an all-time low, and that's the best time to try things. I worked on a 18th century British frigate salvage operation in Lewis, Delaware. I took off from Northwestern. Nobody in my house was happy about that, but I was helping do public relations for a salvage operation. And at 20 years old, I got us on the cover of the Sunday New York Times, and we all flew up into the Today Show.
Where do you get this fire? Where does that come from?
So my dad started the field of sports law. He was the first agent, if you will, though he was a lawyer. And so he liked to say he was a sports attorney, which he was. And so he created the field of sports law, sports marketing, and I was his right-hand man, if you will. Working for a parent is very challenging. I quit once a month. I cried once a week, but he made me really, really good, because he would ask me 20 questions. And then the 21st was the one I couldn't answer. It was like, gotcha. And then I'd cry. But then I'd realize next time I'd have the answer for 21 and it would be 22 where he got me. But he made me really good. So I learned that's how you learn about there are no stupid questions, and you learn about diligence. So anyways, I worked for my father. I was representing professional athletes. I was creating the field of sports marketing. That turned into a job with the salvage operation, was a pivot. I came back and graduated, but I got a professor at Northwestern to make this an internship while I lived in Lewis, Delaware by myself for 6 months at the age of 20. And it was great, and it's what makes me who I am now. And then later I got into finance because I fell in love with a young man who wanted to be in finance. And in my family, that was like marrying a casino operator. Like, you're going to marry a gambler? Well, but he's kind of the house, and they weren't thrilled about that. But then, after Harvard Business School, and I worked while he went to Harvard Business School.
Right.
And I said to myself, I'll be back. And I sat in on lots of, as many classes as I could. I audited as many classes as I could, which was great, and participated as much as I could while I worked 3 jobs to help pay for business school. And I have gone back to Harvard Business School, I'm proud to say.
Pause that.
Yes.
In this time of your life where you're working 3 jobs and you're doing all of this, how did you manage all of that? How did you juggle all of these balls?
I like to have lots of plates spinning. I'm the kind of person I am. I'm one of those weird people that likes to-do lists. I get great satisfaction, literally still with a pen, checking off my list. Sometimes I think that I add things just to get that.
You come to the right place.
Yes, my girl. We're kindred spirits. So yeah, sometimes I'll even I know I'm guilty of doing that just to get that rush of getting something accomplished.
Yeah.
But I like diversity. I like doing different things. I'm not afraid to take risks. I think that you should always roll the dice. And I've moved many times. I move every 7 years. I just do. I'm ready for another move. I find it exciting. So got into finance and ultimately helped my husband at the time choose to be on the buy side instead of the sell side based on what he was talented at. And he worked at Fidelity as the assistant on the Magellan Fund when it was the Magellan Fund.
Wow.
Peter Lynch was there, and then Jeff Finnick. And so I was still working in the sports and entertainment field, but I was learning finance. I was fascinated, and I would listen in on meetings. And I started reading Barron's, and I started reading Business Suite, and I learned the industry. So that was mutual funds. Then we segued into hedge funds. And he actually worked at Soros, was the youngest partner at Soros. And I was still running the literary division and sports and entertainment divisions. But again, always fascinated by the financial markets.
Yeah.
Then we decided that it was best to open our own hedge fund. And that's when I could actually become an active analyst. And so we had a hedge fund in the best of times when little ladies in Ohio were making a fortune. On stocks. It was the 90s, the roaring 90s. And there weren't many of us, actually, which was kind of fun. You go to a conference, there'd be 150 people. Those same conferences now have, 10,000 people. It's certainly not the same. We made a lot of money. I'm not a stuff person. I told you I'm an experiential person. The things that matter to me, and I feel that money is just merely the opportunity to say and instead of or. So I can take a vacation and I can pay my car lease. I can do this and. That's really what it's always meant to me. But more importantly, how could I use this money and all this good fortune to make a difference? My husband at the time did not feel that way. He said, we're creating value, we're creating jobs. Be happy, be grateful. But I knew someday I was going to be able to pivot and utilize that good fortune for things that I felt really mattered, and also grassroots, because we were dealing with public equities. Stocks are, you have nothing to do with them. You buy it in the morning, you could sell it in the evening. You didn't create anything. You're just buying and selling. It's literally a computer transaction. Fast forward, I started doing a little private equity because I was always fascinated by it. I invested early in a company called Zico Water. That was brought to me by a great entrepreneur, and we ended up selling it to Coke for 4 times.
Yep.
I invested in Michael Kors before he went public. I bought Facebook. very early on. So I was dabbling a little bit there. And it wasn't until we got divorced and separated our assets that I said, oh my God, now I'm holding the wheel. And it was frightening. But I did it, and quickly taught myself, had to teach myself a number of things that I didn't already know. And the first thing I did, because I was very comfortable in the philanthropy world, was doing microfinance loans, micro loans to women. What am I talking about? $1,000, a woman buys 2 vacuums and a bunch of cleaning supplies, and she now has a cleaning company. Mm-hmm. $600, and she buys 2 sewing machines, and she has a tailoring business. I had a 99% repayment rate.
Wow.
Who wouldn't want that? What bank wouldn't like that? Yeah. These were all women. I never told them it was a 501c3. I wanted them to take this seriously. And as they repay the loans, I was able to make further loans.
Yeah.
And I was then inspired to do this for-profit. So I thought, how do I do that? And I learned angel investing. Had no idea what that was.
Yeah. And where does that term come from, angel investing?
Because you are literally an angel. I sometimes think it comes from Broadway. Have you heard the term like a Broadway angel? Because they're like sent from heaven. They make things possible because that they're probably not going to get their money back. Yeah. So it's like, manna from heaven. So they're like angel. Mm-hmm. And when you come in at the angel level, you're betting on a person and a product and a hope and a prayer. There's really no traction. You're lucky if there's an MVP, a minimum viable product. You're lucky there probably is no revenue. So you are truly an angel sent because your funds are that early.
Yeah.
Then, of course, it goes seed money and Series A and Series B and venture capital. And I taught myself all these different things. And it was fascinating. I loved learning all these things. But what I really decided was I wanted to focus on women and minorities, because one of the things that was discouraging is only 4% of women were getting funded. 4%. Men could raise money with, an idea and, a beer at the bar with some Silicon Valley bros. Yep. But women could have these great products and couldn't get a phone call.
Right.
And so that's why I decided to focus on female entrepreneurship.
And thus you have. Now, how long have you, since you've made the switch, been focused in female entrepreneurs and all the different ways you've helped give women opportunities?
Thank you. Well, I'm women-centric, love men, and I do invest in men. In fact, most of my cannabis companies are founded by men, though I do have a few female-founded cannabis companies. But I have about 24 companies in my portfolio now. My checks range from small as $25,000 to about $250,000. So that depends on a lot of different parameters. And it's not just companies. I've invested in a play that I'm so proud of. I'm a producer.
Yes, on Jagged Little Pill.
Yes. I did a restaurant. As long as a woman is one of the top 3 positions, as long as a female or minority or a female minority is one of the people who are founding it, then I'm fascinated by it. And I want to give them my support and help them bring further support.
So what is it about a project or a woman? I mean, aside from the financials, right? Since you are really investing in the person, investing in the story and who they are and the lens that they bring to whatever they're doing, you're still taking a financial risk and you know that there's a potential you don't get your money back. So from an emotional standpoint, what is it that drives you to take these gambles on these certain kinds of people? Like, is there a commonality that you could point to sort of between all of them, no matter what industry they're in, that really pulls you in?
Well, the most important thing for me, and I know that 8 out of the 10 investments will go broke and I won't get my money back.
Yeah.
I know that one of them I'll get my money back. And to me, that's a win. But I also know one of them will be a 10x or a 20x, and that will subsidize all the rest.
Yep.
And this is not new. This is the same as the literary industry, the entertainment industry, Broadway. It's ironic how it really extends to all of those different industries.
Yeah.
But my thesis remains such that it needs to be something that I'm proud of. It needs to be something. It has to have some element where if I actually put on my philanthropic hat, I look at it and I say to myself, is my check going to make a difference in the world if this company actually succeeds? If this product is out there? If this is made a possibility? I don't ever write a check just for the sake of writing a check. I'm fortunate enough that I have means. I don't need to make more money. I need to make dreams happen. I need to make women's, I need to make these things possible. That's what I do. And so I would say the number one thing is, am I proud of this? Would I be proud to tell my mother, if she was alive, my grandmother, my children, that I initiated this, that I was behind this? And if the answer is no, and it's purely for fiscal reasons, then I pass.
Yeah. And have you always been that way?
No. When I didn't have the means, I needed to build my coffers. Yeah. And so then, yes, I looked at things far differently.
But once you've got the means, I guess, like, was there a clear shift that you felt internally where you were like, oh, I guess now I'm in this position where the barometer is different for me and it's more intuitive, it's just a difference in approach.
I'm very intuitive, actually. Yeah. And it's funny because I've been in a lot of meetings with a lot of men. And the minute I say my gut says, they start snickering. But then I turn to them, I'm like, you don't understand. A woman's intuition is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
I would take my intuition and my gut over your charts any day of the week. And men don't listen to their gut or intuition, as I think, as much as women do. And whenever I have fought it and I've let logic take over for what I'm feeling, I've made a mistake.
Wow.
So if I listen to my gut, if I listen to that something in the back of my head is telling me, I have to tell you, it pays off.
It pays off. Yeah. That's incredible. So of all the projects then that you have been a part of, which one would you say are you the most proud of?
Oh, I think right now, Cooler Heads. It's a woman who was a founder. She went to Stanford. She had a couple of exits, and then she found herself sick with breast cancer. She wanted to save her gorgeous long red hair, not just because she wanted to save her hair, but because it gives you an element of control when you have no control.
Yeah.
She saw that there's something available at the infusion centers that costs $8,000. And it's a cold therapy that you use. And two companies make them, Paquin and Dignitana. These two companies, they're very big, they're cumbersome. And actually the infusion centers don't want you to use them. Why? You have to put it on. It's a helmet that you would wear to freeze your head so that the poison essentially doesn't go to your brain. And therefore you save your hair. You have to be on it for at least a half an hour before the chemotherapy starts and another half an hour. That's an hour that they can't charge. There's no code for that. So you're taking up an hour in the chair when they could have somebody else that they can make money from. So they don't even push it. So suffice to say, she didn't have the $8,000. She jiggy rigged something to be able to simulate it, and it worked. And then she said to herself, and actually, forgive me, but she had an exit after this, but she made her money. She said, I'm going to make it possible to have a portable version that is inexpensive and that will be covered by insurance and that's portable. And the company is called Cooler Heads, and it is a small portable version that you can actually plug into your car charger. You can put it on before you leave home if you're driving to the infusion center. You don't have to stay longer.
Wow.
And it's custom fit for you. So it has a much better fit. And it costs $800, which is the minimum amount for a wig that insurance will cover. So it's covered by insurance.
Wow.
If that doesn't get made, I will die trying. I wrote the first check. I met her at a women's summit in San Diego that I was speaking at. She came and chatted with me about it afterwards. I said, I'm going to be your first check. And I'm hailing her. I just think she's spectacular. She's going to get it done. She's in trials now with City of Hope and MD Anderson and Dana-Farber. So
that's incredible, Stacey. My mom has been battling lung cancer for 10 years. So she's had her bouts she's done all kinds of variation and chemo and all sorts of different things. And so she's had 10 years, a decade of the ups and downs that come with hair loss, which it does seem so trivial in a lot of senses, but we forget how much of our identity is tied, as women especially, is tied in our hair. And it is a very emotional thing. And you said it's
and
like
your lashes and your brows.
Your lashes and your brow. I mean, it's who you are, because it changes the way your face is perceived, right? Which is like how you appear to the world, how you have chosen to present yourself. That you can control this, and when that control is gone, it's very very challenging. So I think that's an incredible.
So writing a check to Memorial Sloan Kettering is important, but to me, I decided to write it to her so that she could hire the engineers that she needed to get going.
Yeah. Well, that is incredible.
How was your mother?
She's good. She's this miraculous thing where she was actually, not to sidebar from our conversation, but she was diagnosed stage 4 in 2010. And she has been it metastasized, but the tumor has never gotten too big. So they've been able to just maintain it small.
Still here.
She's still here. So she's kind of like she has chronic cancer, we call, because she has chemo every 3 weeks, but she's able to do the minimum dose to keep her going. But of course it's affected her.
Maybe we'll get her one of these units the next round.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of money we spent on wigs for her, and it never looks right, and it's so uncomfortable. It really is. We take for granted the hair and like all the stuff that just grows out of our heads, but it's empowering.
So you can see why I couldn't say no.
Oh my God. It's especially, and the thing that's so funny is, like you said, I don't know if a man would have had that emotional response to that and understand the value of that on such a deeper level, because they don't have that same connection to hair.
Well, all her board members are women, and so far all of her investors are women. So
that's incredible. I'm glad you're doing that. And I can't wait to see it explode into the marketplace. It's wonderful. But to switch gears a little bit, so I want to focus in a little bit on Jagged Little Pill for the purposes of this. And I know that, when I asked you about it, you had this sort of funny response, because you were like, well, I'm a producer, but I'm not really a producer, which I thought was such an honest response, because you are an investor in the show.
But I'm an investor. Let's be honest. I'm not making creative decisions. But I did find out I'm the only one that says that out loud, apparently.
You are. But I think that is important to the context of this conversation, because there's so many questions that creative people have about how investors choose their projects, why you would do this versus this other thing, how it all comes together behind the scenes. And I've been fortunate enough to have a Broadway theater producer on the show. So we got a little bit of the other side of what it's like to, sort of shepherd a show into existence from a creative development perspective. But the financing is just as important, right? Because without people like you, we can't really do our art in the scale of Broadway or whatever. Like, there's many versions of it, but that gives the access to do it on such a bigger scale that is so exciting. So tell me more.
Well, again, I've said no to a number of plays. Like, I didn't feel I was going to change the world backing Tootsie. There's so many of those that, damn Yankees, just did not have to be done for a 4th time.
We don't need it again.
When I saw the workshop for this, I said, oh my gosh, this is Rent 2.0. I mean, this is a modern day. I don't know if your listeners will remember Rent, but it was groundbreaking.
They should. And if they don't know it, you should stop listening to this episode immediately and go listen to all of Rent and then come back.
And this is very relevant. So at the premiere, I sat next to Ben Platt, who some people know him from the TV show The Politician, but I know him from Dear Evan Hansen and other things. He sat to me and he said, next to me, and he whispered, he says, I think you got another Dear Evan Hansen on your hands, meaning a hit that's relevant. And then I said, well, I think if Dear Evan Hansen and Rent had a baby, this would be it. Here we are. So what I saw is that it was destigmatizing and giving a voice to so many people and so many problems that hadn't been addressed on Broadway before. So from a fiscal standpoint, I said to myself, wow, we are going to be bringing in a whole new audience. We are making the pie a lot bigger. We're not taking from other shows. We are bringing in new audience members. But I also said to myself, date rape, opioid addiction, this striving to be perfect, adoption. I mean, just there's so many the class system, racism. There is really, I don't know anybody that watches Jagged Little Pill and doesn't relate to at least one of the predicaments that's in it. And so that's what made me say, and it had all women behind it. Yeah. Eva Price, who's an incredible producer. Diana Paulus, who is our director. Alanis Morissette. It's her music.
Yeah.
We have one man and he's the choreographer. So it was all women at the time. And there's a gal named Abigail Disney who I admire, and she has a company called Level Forward, and I've watched them. And so I put my money in just ahead of them, but I was very proud because when I saw that they came in, I said, because they have a similar investing thesis.
Yeah.
And so I realized that I think I made a good bet.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to have been so aligned with so many things, like you said, that represent who you are and the good that you're trying to do in the world and the means that you have to give it.
When I go to the show, I like to sit in the back of the mezzanine because I don't even watch the show anymore. I love to watch the audience.
Yeah.
I love to see people crying. I love to see them grabbing their seat handles. I mean, and just, having an out-of-body experience and mid-play standing ovations that happen every single week. When is the last time you've gone to a play where that happens? But that's because people are saying, oh my God, you are relating to me. This happened to me. I was kicked out of my house for saying I was gay at 16 or whatever it was. So that is a perfect example of where I say to myself, if I was so blessed to have these financial resources, I can't imagine buying anything that could give me this kind of satisfaction.
Yeah.
You buy something, you have some fun with it. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
the true wealth is experience, right? Is it the experiences that you can give to yourself and to others? That is the true wealth that any of us can hope to have. And the fact that you get to do that on a scale that can impact the lives of so many people is so incredible. And I find, theater and art, the beauty of it to me and why it, as much as it can be so challenging, is that you truly never know, and it's not your job to know the impact that that's going to have in the long run on someone's life, how it's going to change their perspective about something, just 1%, just a tiny bit.
I'm in a Facebook group, though, a Jagged Little Facebook group that has about 3,000 members.
Yeah.
And it's always growing as people see the show. Of course, not now, but it was. And I love looking at the comments that people post. And they're very personal and very raw and very honest. And,
well, that's why we do it, right? That's the hope, is that it can unite us and be a place where people can comfortably experience something uncomfortable, and it gives them a platform and an avenue to process whatever they need to process for themselves. I think it's a wonderful thing. I mean, and so how are you guys doing with, obviously they're calling this the lost season of Broadway and every other art form that sports, everything that anything, the world, all of it that needs.
June 7th is the Tonys, and so the 2019-20 season is over because they're not going to have any shows till after June 7th. But that's okay. We've got to, we'll find a way back. Yeah. We're having meetings, we're having web calls like this, and the cast is actively doing a lot of different things. On Zoom, on webinars, on shows, direct with their fans to help keep them engaged and help them keep their spirit.
And so then hopefully we'll find out soon enough about your Tony nomination as well for Best New Musical, hopefully.
Not gonna lie, that'd be really cool, I have to say.
I mean, we'll see. Putting it out there, why not? You guys have all the makings for it. But so what would you say, as a investor who now has had a taste of producing Broadway, however involved you've been, walk me through a little bit of what that process was like for you coming into this format. I guess you've invested in so many different kinds of things. How was theater specifically different, or how did it supersede expectations? How were you surprised by it?
So there's a reason it's called the Broadway Community and the movie industry.
Huh.
It really is a community. It's very special. And, I don't want to make anyone feel bad about investing in the movie industry because that's, that's necessary. I can't get my hands around that. I don't feel that my checks would make a difference. And I'm just not, I don't know that. But I'm learning the Broadway community by starting off with this project. And it's like anything in life. So I'm 55. There, I said it out loud. But
amazing.
Anyway, but what I always love to say is, how many times to get a first. And the older you are, the less chance you have of having firsts. Really, think about it in your everyday life as you get older. And so this was another first, which I love. And so I wasn't going to waste that opportunity. So I listened. I'll fly to New York for a meeting. I'll fly to New York for a decision on choreography. I make sure that I'm on every call. I'm using it as an opportunity to learn. And while the investment was significant, I feel like I'm also getting back a lot by getting an education.
Yeah.
And so now I'm prepared for future opportunities.
Yeah.
And it's like it's going back to school.
So what are some of the biggest takeaways that you learned?
From this particular, being in the Broadway?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That it's a lot less expensive than the movie industry. I used to just go to the theater and I didn't understand the whole ticketing process and percentage of seats and seats sold. And there's certain formulas. And if the theater isn't at least 80% full, then you're not going to recoup your money. I learned a lot of behind the scenes, kind of under the covers, things like that. But most important, that the actors do it for the love of the craft. I don't want to sound cliche, like out of a chorus line, but like what I did for love. But they do it for love. They really do. Nobody's getting rich on Broadway. They are doing it for their craft and for having that communal experience. And that's why that is one of the things that will be the hardest to replicate in a time of crisis like this with COVID. Because unlike movies and television that you can do with just a crew and then have it aired later, you can't do that. That's not the essence of Broadway.
Yeah.
That's something that we've been discussing.
Yeah, you can't recreate that live experience too.
Right.
Like even if you could bring in cameras and record 3 different angles of a show, it's
maybe we'll sell every other seat or every 3 seats or there's something. We're having discussions about that. Hey, I go to Costco and people are like in front of me, behind me, so and it shouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
So as we open, I'm hoping that it'll be more regulated, and I'm feeling very hopeful now. I'm feeling that we're going to be opening soon. I'm in California, and I see a light at the end of the tunnel now. I really do.
Good. What is one misconception that people have about what you do as an investor, as an entrepreneur who's investing in other entrepreneurs, that you're like, I wish people just knew this?
So I never like to waste anybody's time. I think people's time is incredibly valuable. And if you waste it, you're stealing from them. So when people come to pitch to me, I always try to make sure that they leave with something. And it might not be a check, but I don't want to let them go home empty-handed. And I think people don't realize how heart-wrenching it is, because you can't say yes to every project. You just can't. It wouldn't make sense. And, I still have to have my fiscal responsibility as well. So I'd say the misconception is that people think it's easy to say no. It's really, really gut-wrenchingly hard for me a lot of times to have to say no. And when it's no to a check, that's when I then open up my Rolodex, Google Rolodex, for those of you that don't know what a Rolodex is. And I go through and I say, who can I hook them up with? How can I help them in another way? So, and I do that on a regular basis.
Have you ever had an experience that was particularly harder than others that really stuck with you, and you had to, go home and sort of decompress from it and sort of cleanse yourself from it because it was so challenging? It did.
Well, I was in an abusive relationship many years ago. And I had all the means in the world to leave, and I didn't. And so I'm particularly amazed by women that will leave in the middle of the night with their baby on their back and a satchel, and enough for bus fare. I mean, it amazes me how women can get out of abusive relationships. And when they do, they're my heroes. So I think that's extraordinary. And there was a company that came to me, and it had to do with domestic violence, and and I wanted to write a check so badly because of the nature of that part of it. But I just couldn't because of other factors that it was too early. It was just an idea. There was lots of reasons why I just couldn't do it. That was one that kept me up for a couple of nights.
And what do you do when you have those experiences? How do you cope? What is your process to get through that?
Besides Xanax?
Besides Xanax.
Just 1 milligram.
Xanax and wine.
Half a milligram. Cut it in half. It's so hard. I have a wonderful significant other, and, I'll keep him up all night. He's a surgeon, so he has a service heart. He's a doctor.
Yeah.
So he gets it when I'll have him up all night, say, but, and he says, you can't say no to everything. You can't, you're helping them in other ways. Go to sleep. You'll get through it. So
yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, I think that's an important note. I think a lot of, you think you're right, a lot of people would have this impression that it is all numbers and it's just very easy to navigate that. But I think so much of what you're describing to me sounds like trusting your gut is an inherently emotional process, and you have to have an intelligence about your emotional life that is a strength, in my opinion. A lot of people can say that women who are in touch with that part of themselves, that vulnerability is a deficit, but I actually think it's the opposite. And when you're so in touch with that, it's it costs so much, you know what I mean? It can cost so much. And so when you live that constantly, I always wonder, what is it then that you do to to refill your well and build yourself back up a little bit, because you can't save the world. You can't hug the world, as we say in Portuguese. You kind of have to just do what's within the means of what you can do.
Well, whenever I have 4 kids, and if they come to me and they're depressed, and I'm saying it like that because it's not clinically depressed, they're bored or whatever it is. I'm just whatever. And I say, go do something good for someone. You can't be depressed while you're being grateful, while you're being proud and grateful at the same time. Yeah. So just go do something good for somebody else. I'm a firm believer in that. And I used to take them to, Children's Hospital with me, and to shelters with me, just so they, could to see that we're very, very lucky. So I think that doing something good for someone, and I see so much of that happening right now during the virus. There is nothing better that social media could be used for than seeing 7:00 every night at shift change, people, no matter where they are, going out on their balconies and cheering for our first responders, and seeing the great humanity that's going on with people. That's maybe the best part about all this right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's nice to see people showing up for each other in all the ways that they can and supporting one another. It's like, if only we didn't have to be in a national crisis to act this way. Wouldn't it be nice? Is it kumbaya? Am I searching for utopia? I don't know.
Great.
But so the challenges, so much of this show is so, for me, I'm sort of a junkie for understanding how people navigate dark times in their lives, where as you were saying at the beginning, the path is never a straight line. There's so many sort of dark corners that you're turning, and you get lost down an alley and all of these things, so how have you navigated all of that? And was there a time where it wasn't clear, you didn't know how to get to that next level of what you were doing, whatever that was, and what was it that kept you going? How did you get through that?
We always go through that, and it's, how do you get yourself back up the next morning, up and out of bed and forward, and get your shit together and say, I'm going to continue on. A lot of you hear about spin control and how things are projected, but you have to do your own spin control within yourself sometimes. And so I sometimes take things, and I like to look at things. I always say I turn the rock 360. And I really look at things from all different angles, and almost till I exhaust myself. But I always find that really helps me, because I always try to figure out a way, why did this happen? Right now this sucks, but there's a reason it happened. And I'd love to find out now. I may not find out for 5 years from now, or maybe I'll find out tomorrow. But I have to start thinking about why this happened. I call me a fatalist or whatever, but I a lot of times I feel that things happen for a reason, and that you have to pay attention to them, and then make an opportunity out of something that you thought was, awful, but also being willing to take risks. And I know it gets harder as you get older, and I know it's harder if you don't have financial stability to take risks. But I have to say that often playing it safe wasn't the best thing for me. And what's the worst thing that can happen? And like I always say, it doesn't hurt to ask. So a lot of times when I'm afraid to ask for something, I just say, it doesn't hurt to ask. Yeah. Or you don't have to, be disagreeable to disagree. So I'm going to go back and speak to that person and try to do it another way, but I feel like I'm very self-reflective like that. I know my weaknesses. I know them very well. And so I take situations and I think, what was my part in this? Because the ego can really screw you up. And if you just come from something from ego, and everything starts with ego, right? If it's a negative thing, like your ego is hurt. Like, oh my God, I was let go, or I wasn't hired, I wasn't chosen, or whatever it is. And so then I always stop and say, get your ego out of this and let's look at this from another standpoint. And it's so much clearer. It reminds me of like a divorce lawyer. Like when I went through my divorce, I was like, and he was always so composed, and so was the other lawyer. And that reminded me, that's right, they care, but not that much. So you have to find a way to get out of yourself and not be in that tornado, step aside and not care that much, I think, to get clarity on the situation.
Yeah.
First, I have my tizzy. I have my ego meltdown. And then I step away and I go, okay, look at this from somebody else who's not in the middle of it, who didn't happen. Just look at it objectively, and that's how you'll find your way out. And that's really what I do.
That's incredible. I'm in facing some situations in my own life where it's like serendipitous that you're saying all of this to me right now. Oftentimes when I record with people, I feel like I'm just getting free therapy, and they somehow know, like the messages that I personally need to hear. And
wow. I didn't know.
Crazy that I need to be hearing this. And I hope that people listening are also somehow connected to it in that way, because it feels oftentimes so eerie almost and serendipitous for me. And so it's almost like, are you affected, right?
And the other thing about anger, by the way, because I I majored in anger. I was D1 anger. Like I was really good at holding grudges. And I learned that absolutely does not serve you well. And somebody said to me, anger is like drinking poison and thinking that the other person's going to drop dead. What are you doing? You're poisoning yourself.
Yes.
Knock it off. And so I try really hard now when I get very angry. And like I say, have my little hissy fit, my ego, whatever, and my anger. And I'm never going to forgive them. And then I realize, like, they're living their life. They're not thinking about me.
No. Yeah.
They're having a good time while I'm here, like doubled over and, in a fetal position. So like, knock it off.
Yeah. It's like they say that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. It's like you get to choose how you want to react. It's not to say you shouldn't suffer, you shouldn't feel the full extent and expression of your humanity, but it's almost like I find sometimes we can get obsessed with like a pixel of something, right? And if we can just zoom out, you get to see the whole picture, and you see that pixel isn't really all that important when you look at the whole picture. And that I need that like lesson constantly in my life, because so much of my job is to look at the things that don't work and could go wrong at any moment, and that it can very easily bleed into all other areas of my life. And it can make me be a glass half empty or half full negative sort of perspective,
empty,
or like I barely have a glass, like the glass is broken and old and, duct tape.
Off the glass.
So I think it's a really good reminder, especially in these times.
And another misconception, people think that when you have money, that you're automatically happy as heck, that you automatically have it all, and that you don't have any problems.
You're saying money does not buy happiness.
I've sat in a 22,000 square foot house, curled up like this on a gorgeous marble floor, crying, wishing I could be anywhere but there. So trust me when I tell you, you make yourself happy. The money just gives you choices. It gives you the freedom to say and instead of or. It makes it so you can pay your bills. That's what it does. And when I sometimes will see on social media, it makes me a little bit crazy. And I see people with their 5 cars and they're this and the bling and their stuff and their blah, blah, blah. And I just think to myself, oh, I feel so bad for them because they must be so empty because these things are so fleeting and they don't really, you're never going to get filled. You have a hole that's never going to get full no matter how much crap you buy or how much stuff you buy. And so that was a big lesson is that, again, money gives you freedom, but certainly doesn't give you, and gives you options, but certainly doesn't give you happiness. And happiness is a choice that you make every day.
Yeah. I mean, we see a lot of people who come into large sums of money and don't know what to do with it because they don't have the knowledge to understand that it's a freedom that gives you the choices, and they go to the other extreme thinking that they're going to buy all this stuff and it's going to fill all these holes that they haven't had a chance to truly look into, because we I think as a society are fed this idea that is the American dream, right? Like you want all of those things that are propagated in the media, and there's industries built on telling you that whatever you have, if it's just your own well-being, well, that's not enough. You should want these things. These things will bring you happiness. These things will make you desirable. These things will make you beautiful, and the massive industries catered specifically to making women feel bad. So then they go out and buy things they don't need, you know?
Right. Look at the Instagram things that are coming through now. Everything is about like, do your own manicure, lashes, blah, blah. Everything is about that. I haven't gotten any, self-care that was something internal. So yes, you're right. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. It's like, you've got to go from the inside out. You can't, and I think me coming from a very different world than you have come from, like as a total immigrant who came from very meager means, and my parents like sacrificed everything, left everything behind in Brazil so we could come here and pursue our dreams. It's like we have seen that our value system is just different, and it's like, of course we want to have the comforts and the freedom, like you said, that money brings, but not at the expense of other things. And I think sometimes it's treated as if you can only have one without the other. And I just don't believe in that at all. And I think you seem to be living proof of that, that you can have both of those things, that these things can coexist. And gosh, if you get to be fortunate enough to have all those things, have enough more than you need for yourself, and then also get to empower other people to go pursue the things that they have dreamed about in ways they're going to like make small changes in the world, like that. That's being rich.
That's true. That's true wealth. That's true.
That's the wealth. And that's that's a wonderful goal to.
And I try to tell people that there are different currencies, and you should not only be measuring it by, the dollar. You've got your spiritual currency, right? You've got, there's things that fill you. There's things that have great value that aren't just money in the bank. And really, you should be looking for those things and having as much of that as possible. I just yesterday, somebody said to me, live your life like you're writing your eulogy, not your resume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Somebody said that to me once a while ago too, like 2 years ago, maybe. And I like to repeat it often because we can get caught up in.
Well, that person who told it to me was you. So I would like to point that out.
I was trying to play it cool, but okay, fine. Yeah, I think it's true. I think we can get caught up in, and particularly in the film industry specifically, where I operate and sort of live and breathe in this independent space where so much is like who and where you're going and the jobs you're doing and the sort of external validation of the projects by the industry that created it. And it's all of that. I think it's important to have goals and metrics to work towards. But if you're going to have a terrible journey, and if you're going to become a terrible, cynical, miserable human on the path there, then what is the point? I really preach this and I believe it and I say it everywhere. And if you're listening to the show, you're probably like, yes, Carolina, we've heard you say this a million times, and I'll say it for the rest of my life, because I did not believe that for a long time, and I had to have a shift into, who do I want to be when this is all said and done? And it's a constant reminder. And there are many challenges along the way that go, are you sure? You sure you want a life that's...
You have listeners, by the way, who are moms. I always feel like it's our responsibility as mothers to change the shift in our children. And so I would really catch myself saying to my daughter, look how pretty you are. Pretty. No, I'd say, oh, look how clever you are. wow, you are savvy. Wow, you're creative. Wow, you're, accomplished.
Yeah.
So we can start changing the narrative with our children or young people that we come into contact
with our words and and I think,
yeah,
like, what is it who do you want to be and how do you want to show up for other people? And I think that you have to go on a journey that sometimes isn't comfortable to find out what that is and truly prioritize who you're going to be, not what you're going to be. Because I think, especially in my industry where there's such a hierarchy with like titles and pay, how much you get paid versus your title. And there's so many different levels of positions. Sometimes people can get caught up in like, well, I'm the producer and you're the PA. And it's like, that doesn't matter. Those are just titles.
That's ego.
Temporary and fleeting. Yes, ego. And that all changes. It's all going to change. It's like, how about kindness? How about compassion? How about
I've never asked somebody to do something that I either haven't done or that I don't currently do. So when I was listening to your show, like with Mary Howard, but people say, get coffee for you. I think, what world are we living in now? The first thing you should say is, what can I get you? What can I bring you? What a pleasure it would be. I think if we all stepped out of ourselves and didn't think things were above or beneath us, whatever, we just have to have more of a service heart in everything, in our business, in our personal lives. It's the ego is really quite dangerous.
It is dangerous. And I think who you are in your professional life should never be different than who you are in your personal life. I think in the film industry, especially, your currency is your integrity. It's all you have. Like, I don't go out for jobs and people look at my resume or look at movies I've produced and the budget I made and how they fared compared to what I thought it was going to cost. That's literally never happened. It's all trust. It's all word of mouth. It's all relationships. It's all instinctual. It's all your gut. So I think it's hard to believe that when you're starting out because it feels so far-fetched. It feels so pie in the sky. And I remember when I was starting out, I used to get angry at people like myself who would say this kind of stuff. Cause I'm like, what do you mean? There's gotta be like a practical guide to getting there. Like it can't just be that. And I exhausted myself thinking that was the thing. I'm going to do I'm going to do the things that I'm supposed to do. But life had other plans for me, and certain situations that were thrust upon my life forced me to make a very sharp turn in my own journey and kind of really have to reflect on this very theme of like, well, who do I want to be and how do I want to show up? And if this is the way the industry wants me to be, then I'm not going to be this person. I'm going to find a different industry, or I'm going to find my own way to get there. Right. And it's going to take a little longer and it's probably going to be more painful, but the journey is going to be so much sweeter when I get to the other side. And when I'm 80 lying on my deathbed, or not deathbed, because that sounds dramatic, but when I'm reflecting back on my life, like that's the stuff that you're going to remember, and who you were able to be and how you were able to show up for other people, even in the face of challenge, especially in the face of challenge like we're facing right now. These are the moments that show us who
I'm very impressed and proud with everything you're saying, because you're in an industry that is really the opposite of that. I have one quick anecdote that I'll tell you about at my daughter's school for anybody that has a child out there. And, with all that I've done, my degrees and all that, I spent like a good 4 or 5 years working at they called it the Chuck Wagon at my daughter's school, and it's where you serve school. So I was Pizza Wednesday, I was Taco Thursday, I serve lunch to the kids, which I loved. And that was my way of being able to volunteer and be in the classroom. One day, one year my daughter was 6 years old, so she was in first grade, and they did self-portraits. And it was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it was back to school night. And I came and I looked around and I couldn't see my daughter because she has long, beautiful brown hair and there was nothing that even resembled her. And then the teacher brought me over and there was her drawing and her hair was in a white hairnet. So that's why I didn't recognize her. And it said, when I grow up, I want to be a lunch lady like my mother. And my ego went, oh, my daughter thinks I'm a lunch lady. And then my heart said, my daughter wants to grow up to be me.
Yeah.
And if that's how she sees me, because I'm in her school, then I made a good choice.
Yeah.
So, what matters more? And I think that if it was certainly it wouldn't have been, I want to be a capitalist like my mother. I want to be a hedge fund manager like my mother.
Yeah.
No. She thought I was a lunch lady. Why? Because I was. I had made that choice, and it was a good one.
When you're a kid, having lunch is the happiest part of your day. So getting to see your mom bringing you lunch, that's incredible.
Serving lunch to all the kids on the campus and giving your friends extra dessert and extra Oreos and stuff. Oh yeah, there was a currency that was really big to my 6-year-old, to all 4 of my kids, and it had nothing to do with dollars, right? That's beautiful. You have to think about the different bank accounts that you have in your life and the different currencies that and the deposits that are made in those. And really just think about those, because you're a lot richer than you think you are.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, we are getting close to the hour, and I do want to be respectful of your time. My last question for you would be, what advice do you have for someone who looks at what you've done and how you've been able to, obviously there's been certain circumstances in your life that have yielded and made you be able to be in a certain position to be able to grow and build and all of that. But what advice would you give to someone who wants to learn more about investing and being an entrepreneur and empowering others, even if they don't have tons of money to play with, but they want to take what maybe little they do have to invest in people in their communities, especially right now, and give them sort of a jump start into the thing they're trying to do?
Well, I'm definitely going back to my loans, where I started all these years ago now, thanks to COVID, because there's a lot of women now that will need to start businesses again, and will need to, giving interest-free loans, helping women get on their feet again. So I'm very excited to get that going again. I think the thing that's most important is baby steps. Start small. Go online and look up anything you can about the subject. And then there's so many different investing groups and summits and classes. And I mean, I could do 10 a week if I had time. You just have to kind of look them up. There's Tech Coast Angels, there's Golden Seeds, there's OSHA Angels, there's just Plum Alley. There's so many different groups. Those all just happen. A lot of them happen to be women that invest in women. But there's a lot of places that are dying to have new members. And if your check is $500 or it's $500,000, the only difference is that, there's more zeros on your check, but they still need you. They need your ideas. They want your input. They want to teach you. And it's a great place to learn and start small. I think of it like the new book club. So instead of a book, how about getting your group together and everyone think of a new business that they know somebody's starting, and then together investigate where you want to put your money. So let's say you pool your money. It's $50 a woman and there's 10 of you, so you have 500, or it's $500 and there's 10 of you and there's 5,000. And you decide together to make an investment in a woman, and you do the work together. All about it. Love that idea. Well, thank you so much. This has been an incredible hour spent with an angel. Thank you. This is lovely.
I loved it. Thank you.
Did an hour go by?
It did.
I can't believe it.
Right? And I'm trying really hard to not be so verbose because I tend to talk a lot. But
oh no, I love everything you have to say. I love it. I can't believe an hour went by. It was such a treat. Thank you.
And that's this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in week after week and doing this live thing with me. Please spread the word, tell a friend, tag a friend. Follow me on social media. I'm at Carolina Gropa. The show's at Life with CACA. Would love to hear what you think. And I'll see you next week. Beijos.